使える霊装があるのではないか。
Good evening. We're picking up where we left off on Monday, and right before stream started, I was turned back into my original form. Oh, also, congratulations on being first. Also, I just realized I'm on the wrong side, so let's just fix that real quick. We find ourselves at the root of a spirit font conflict. And there seems to be a whole lot of stuff happening.
Saber, いけるか?
But splitting up is kind of OP, so I'm gonna do that. Yeah, Saber, please go that way. I will go this way. And everything's gonna work out. Two battle stations. And then they go and they mess with Lancer. If they go here, they'll be connected here, so I can't cut them off by going here. Trying to think what the best way to handle this is. Also, technically, in hindsight, it would have been better to send Saber this way so that he could handle the monster. But it is what it is. If I do this, I get this, which I kind of want. So I'll do that. Two extra actions would let me do some shenanigans, so let's do that. Right, Saber, these two go like this. Yori will go like... this. Oh yeah, I got another darting dragon. Oh, does Saber not move on the same initiative as Yori? Okay, that changes things actually, just a little bit. Also, yeah, if the final battle was the entire map, that'd be kind of awesome. Okay, I assumed that, like, Saber would get extra turns on my turn. Alright, if this guy goes this way, it's actually fine, because... Saber's still got mana from here. In hindsight, I should have had Yori go this way. Now Yori goes this way. That should kill the monster. Excellent. Ignite that spirit bomb. Yep. Saber's already going where I want Saber to go. That's good. That guy is dead. Their name is Saber. Even if they're a boy, yeah. Didn't use the Mystic Code. It's like, oh no, they set a trap. Anyway. This should be fine. Get wrecked. Keep an eye out for the flow of the ley lines. I'm actually gonna be a little bit petty and ask Saber to go back this way so I can claim that area that I lost control of earlier. And if I could get Lancer, that would also be really helpful. Oh no, they're going somewhere. And they're moving in a way that will let me kill them instantly. So good for them. And they're dead. Powerful enemy. Powerful magical energy coils about them. My actions could be a bit better, but I'm about to grab Lancer, which I think is going to give me more actions. Yes, Lancer, please, do help. Excellent. Lancer, please do me a favor and head this way. I will head this way. And Saber is catching up. They're gonna convene, it's gonna be awesome. Two of them together are both going the same place. Excellent. And Saber will catch up, I'm sure. And now I need to remember how to actually fight in this game. Oh, he's dead. I'm sure that if questioned, he would agree that I've remembered how to fight. Well, actually, if questioned, he would say, because he's dead. But you know what I mean. And he's dead too. Didn't they say that this one had like tremendous... Oh. Yeah, that would do it. I was gonna say, didn't they say that this enemy had like tremendous magical energy? I didn't have to do anything, the nerd rotated himself. Oh. Thank you for the rotation. When I do it, it raises my power level. And then I stabbed him 37 times. And he's dead. I have much to learn of the way of two swords. Well, you're right, look at it this way. At least you figured out how to use two swords. For like the first huge chunk of the game, you exclusively used one. Let us make haste. Do I have to be with Saber to get an interaction with them? I forget. Yes? Alright, in that case, can I... Can I say that I want to, like, pass a turn? Is that what finish actions means? Does that just, like, make the rest of the board advance a step? Let's find out. I will rejoin with Saber. Lancer, please do me a favor, go that way. I will go this way. We got some shadow stitching. Lancer is doing a good. There are foreign ships here too. Ships like these can even cross the ocean, huh? Depending on the crew's skill, storms, pirates, many things can sink a ship. Things haven't changed much then. And we reconvene with Lancer. A masterful display. The enemy has no means to escape. Lancer, only I can enter this location? Alright, Lancer, have fun. Do your thing. Right, let's look for Dorothea. We still don't know it's her for certain. We'll have to see how things play out. Even those free of greed cannot help but look. Looks like I need a bunch of stuff, so I'll just buy a bunch of stuff. I've got money these days. Let's see. There's a fight to be had here. And there's dialogue here. My friend's having a baby soon. What should I get her as a gift? Earplugs. I ran into a foreigner girl earlier, and wasn't she the prettiest little thing? Carry on, I suppose. Whatever Dorothea's up to, I just hope she knows something about Kaya. I have fed Saber, thus ensuring his loyalty. Oh, there's another fight up there too, actually. I know I don't have to do every fight, but I kind of want to do every fight. Yeah, Kaya would be happy to know that I killed everything that might have intervened in me saving her. Saber keeps talking like he's going to offer me a link strike, and then he keeps not offering me a link strike. Do I need to have Saber as like my active thing to do link strikes with him? Also, I need to be Earth to not have my attacks block. I don't need Saber to be active? Alright then. I need to pick up the I need to pick up the Earth's Tree skill that makes it so that, like, none of my stances, deflect. Oh, Saber got rotated too. It stabbed a lot. Wasn't Wind Stance... Fire Stance Afterglow will temporarily increase damage and cause your attacks to ignore shell gauges. Ooh, that's good actually. And then I exploded.
力を借りる。
任せろ。息を合わせろ。行くぞ。
Collectively, we are the storm that is approaching.
燃え盛る炎のごとく。終わりだ。
Oh, that got me a lightning fart.
油断は禁物。
わかるぞ。勝って兜の尾を締める。だな。
Saber's like, always keep your helmet on. Saber, neither of us wear helmets. You're wearing a headdress. Headdresses don't count. Damn, how'd you find me out? I know it's a crime, but a man's gotta eat.
早々に片付けるぞ。
That guy just assumed that I was here to beat his ass. I mean, he was right, but like, for the wrong reasons.
見えている。決める。終わりだ。終わりだ。
My health seems a little bit low. Just a little. I should probably do something about that. And he's dead.
この勝利。
We won, thanks to you, Saber.
こそだ。
That part where you stood around and didn't rescue me when I was at critical health really pulled the whole thing together, I think. Ooh, puppy.
おとなしいな。
Ari is just in the background, seething. Like, how dare somebody else get petted? That's my job. Thank you for the head pats. I have burned Saber. These things happen. Yeah, making her extra jealous. Ooh, Jade. Oh, I got Jade already. Alright. I should probably look into actually, like, getting some of the other, workshop upgrade things. Now that I've actually got some resources to do so. And he's dead. Screw that one guy in particular. I feel like I have perhaps forgotten my... I feel like I have perhaps forgotten my original objective. Kitty. I like kitties.
おとなしいな。
My goals are simply unknowable. Beyond human comprehension. This shall make a fine field of battle. Your lives are forfeit before my techniques. Does your technique involve holding your sword by just your index finger and thumb? Because that's what you're doing. I don't think that's a very solid grip. Never mind, I stand corrected. I could learn a thing or two from him. I think I'm starting to get the idea behind Afterglow. And he's dead. Oh, he certainly got the point. And I got to pet the cat. This cat is very vocal. I got this cow just like phased into existence. Yeah, the kitty cat, yeah. What do you see, Saber? Has Timmy fallen down a well? Something certainly caught the eye. Oh, sorry to keep you waiting here, right? Fair enough. I should probably double check the skill tree so I can like actually see which prerequisites I need to hit to get that skill that I want. Let's do that right now. Hi, Arya. Right, acquire skills. Not that one. Oh, that one. I've got exactly enough for it, no less. Increase level Phantasm. Make Saber attack in tandem with me sometimes. That's useful. And I can't afford anything for Arya right now. But I'm happy, I got what I was after. And they're dead. Weird mushroom creatures. If that's not like a generic thing that like mages can do, I wonder if there's like a mushroom servant that we haven't encountered yet. Pretty sure those are homunculi that would fall under the umbrella of like things that mages can just do. Triumphant courage, and more importantly, a puppy dog. We must pet the dog. It's like that one scene from Persona, it's like it's time to button mash, except like, literally. Mashing the button means you pet the dog more. I just saw a young foreign girl around here. She was muttering something to herself.
聞いたかより
Did you hear that,
ドロ
Iori?
テアで間違い
It's
ある
Dorothea,
まい
without a doubt.
そう遠くへは
They
行って
can't
い
have
ない
gone
はず
far.
だ
Let's search the area. That's Assassin.
ドロテアも共
And
にある
Dorothea is with him. Be on guard, Iori.
カヤのことドロテア
Just immediately charge in. Assassin. My. Miyamoto, Iori, and Saber. That look on your faces, whatever's the matter.
ランサーが奪ったものを返して
Return
も
what
らう
Lancer stole from us. Don't even try to refuse. Lancer?
待てセイバ
Wait, Saber, don't get ahead of yourself.
はった
What
り
is
だろうと
Wheeler
な
of
ん
Love?
だ
We have to come on strong from the start. Huh? What's this? Are the two of you quarreling? You do seem a little scattered. Especially if you believe I would join up with fanatics like those. Eh? What a ludicrous notion. Don't you think so, Assassin? Quite right. Oh, Thank you for the hydration.
私に貸し付くならば話は別だけれど
If they were just working for me, it'd be different, but no, that just wouldn't do.
理性と知性を失った
Dorothea
獣と
Koya joining with witless, senseless beasts. It's simply unthinkable.
ならば
If that's the case, then why did you set your men to action?
あなたに教えて何かいい
I wonder what I had to gain from telling you that.
少なくとも
For one, we won't have to cross swords here and now.
へえ
Oh, is that so?
いずれ戦う相手だもの
We'll have to fight sooner or later. I have no qualms picking up where we left off. I like the way you think, pretty-eyed foreign girl.
あらありがとう
Why, thank you,
素敵な
magnificent
東
Eastern
洋の
warrior.
ただ
But now might not be the best time. So it sounds like you have a qualm with picking up where we left off. The sea is choppy. A storm could be brewing.
嵐だと
A storm, you say?
地脈霊脈
You know the meridians,
そう
ley
いうもの
lines?
があるでしょ
There's an abnormality in the flow of
長き
magic.
東から西へ
Enormous magical
膨
energy
大
is
な魔
flowing
力が
from
流
east to
れお
west.
侍さん
Mr. Samurai Miyamoto Biori,
あなたは正義の魔
you're
術
no
師じゃ
proper
ないで
mage,
しょう
so
か
you
ら
may not have realized.
私にとっては
To my eyes, it's in an alarming state.
地脈
Meridians.
東よ
From far to the east of here,
そこに陣取った何者かが
whoever has claimed that area is attempting massive spells around Kanagawa.
大魔術とは
What do you mean by massive
言
spells?
葉の通りの大
Exactly
掛か
that,
りな魔
large
術
scale magecraft.
何
And we
が
won't know what'll happen until it
けれ
happens.
どまず間違い
But
な
one
く
thing is certain, they're doing it to be victorious in the waxing moon ritual. Dorothea?
えおしゃべ
Right,
り
that's
は
enough
こ
chit
こま
chat.
で
If you'll excuse us, we'll be on our way.
次は決着をつけましょう
We'll settle this next
あな
time.
たたちの敗
By which I mean the
北
curtains
と
will
いう
close on your defeat.
待て
Wait,
追いたいなら追えば
chase us if you want. We'll have to keep up with assassin speed, though. Alright,
難しいかもしれないわね
you might have some trouble. The meridian in this
地
area is
脈の
suffering
異
an
常にあけ
abnormality.
怪異の類がど
It'll
ん
be
どん
teeming
湧
with
いているみた
monstrosities
い
in no time. Do be
先生
careful,
気
won't
を
you?
つ
So it's like now we have to save the innocent people.
やられたな
They got us good. Throwing monsters our way while they make their escape.
何
No
簡単
problem.
だ
We'll just fight them off and continue
こ
along.
こは急ぎたいところだ
There's no time to waste, but we can't avoid them either. We'll have to break through. Leave it to me.
いつでもよいぞより
It bothers me a little bit that Saber wears a sword at his hip. But it's not the sword that he draws when he draws his sword. It's also not the sword from his Noble Phantasm, so it's just kind of there.
いつでもよい呼べ
Eh, my bones.
いつでもよいぞより
直しすぐに片付けるぞ
None of that, please and thank you.
合図をくれより
Not having my attacks deflected is a really nice feeling.
いつでもよい呼べ
I wonder if Saber's just freaking out because we're sitting at max affinity and max synchronization.
読めた
None of that. They don't make it easy for us, do?
とん
Huh?
だ手間を食わされたな。
And we're done, by the sounds of it.
それで
So, do you believe what the girl said, Iori?
あの
The girl,
娘
oh, Lady Dorothea?
あれは気持ちのいい
It's
人物
refreshing
だ
that she says exactly what she means. I can believe somebody like that.
なぜ
Why?
こちらも気持ちが軽くなる
It's one less thing to worry about. If she's lying, we'll deal with it when it comes up.
騙されるかもしれないし
She could be tricking us. She could be stabbing us in the back.
それがどうした
And what of it? Yeah, sorry, Jigsaw, you did miss purse. And what of it? You sure are something.
なんだい
So
そ
you
れ
don't care whether a person is good or bad?
笑ってくれるな
Is it funny? My master always used to scold me about not making clear distinctions. Well, I can certainly see why.
けど
But I actually
君
like
の
that
そう
about
い
you.
うとこ
なんだやぶ
What's
から
with you
棒
all
に
of a sudden?
ことの葉のままだ
Exactly what I
い
said.
おりがサーバント
Although
を
I'm
どう
not
捉
sure
え
what
て
you
い
think
るか
about
は
me as a
知らん
servant.
そうか
I see.
お前に好かれるほどの人生
If you
で
can
あっ
like the
たの
person
な
that I
ら
am, then I can't be that wrong. I see.
ではより
Well, Iori,
ドロテアを
you're
信
the
じ
one
る
who
君
trusts
は
Dorothea, so where are we headed?
そうだな
Right.
信
If
じ
you
た
can
上
trust
で
her. I think Consultant just stole your chicken, Jigsaw.
今は
We
西
need
へ
to
急ぐ
hurry to the west.
東ではなく西
So,
か
not to the east, huh? Why go west?
川崎の西
West of Kawasaki will first hit Kanagawa Port.
東の術者が
The mages to the east are weaving a massive spell towards Kanagawa. If Kaya is there,
一刻の猶予も
then
な
we
い
don't have a moment to lose. Very well, let's move.
おお
神奈川港
Kanagawa Port. I hope Kaya is there.
より
They came, eh? In that case.
気を抜くな
Yori, reinforcements. Don't let your guard down. Lancer? Lancer, are you still there?
やぶ
Lancer's like, oh shit, right. If I go this way, I can pull in Lancer and kind of like have him clean up behind me. Unless Lancer still can't go in there.
破れる
Alright, cool. He's got his stuff. If I picked the other option, I would have gotten a different character directing me towards the port. I assumed it was something like that.
何
Oh shoot.
いきなり奨励値
Why are there
増え
more
たぞ
minor spirit fonts all of a sudden?
これはやら
We've
れ
been
た
had.
わい
Based on abnormality in the ley line to conceal the minor spirit fonts. Even my eyes were deceived. Iori, this enemy is not to be taken lightly. Oh shoot, Earth Arts.
敵のまじないだ
A curse, be careful. If I split off Saber, can I have Saber use a Mystic Code on his own? Nobody can still intercept, gotcha. I will let Lancer deal with this. The best way to handle this would technically be to grab this. Alright, I think what I'll do is... I will send Iori here. And then Iori will do this, while Lancer goes there and Saber goes here. And I can just have Iori like run down the coastline to
敵
get
は
back.
撤退したようだ
Nice. The enemy's retreating. Way to send them packing.
バケモン退治は単純でいいね
If some moving monsters is straightforward enough. I have no idea how to play as Kukulin. You know the generic stuff, obviously. think that Remnant thinks I know how to play as
おかげさん
Kukulin.
でいい暇
That
つ
was
ぶ
a
し
nice
に
way
な
to
っ
kill
た
some
ぜ
time. 'Darting Dragon'.
魔術を
Mage
使っ
Craft,
て
be
き
on
た
your guard. This is fine. So he's gonna go all the way there. So he's gonna get hit by Iori. Saber's gonna go there, which I want. Lancer's gonna go there, which I want. This is fine.
来い切ってくれる。はあ。ほっ。ほっ。出りゃ。
Yeah, I don't think bats are much of a fight for Saber. Presumably, here we are.
あらでか。行くぞ。
I was gonna say, presumably there's something else behind
自然
them.
にあふれる力。ここに集いて刃となす。絶技。発揮。怒涛。
What shell gauge? And then he knew himself to fight Iori. Can I get you all to like patch together? Thanks. And he's dead too.
二点の道
I have much to learn, he says after completely clowning on an entire crowd of people. Okay, Lancer's gonna do that, which is what I'm after. Saber's gonna do that, which is great. Yeah, this is fine. Seized all the ley lines, have you? Nice, good work. Saber, go this way. Iori, also go this way. Lancer can go this way. Will be join with Saber. Only Iori can go that way, that's fine. We rescue Kaya before considering anything else. Right, let's get a move on Iori.
決して逃がさんぞ
やるなセイバーきっと無事でいる
諭されるとはな。ならば逃げたらいいか。
The enemies are like, I don't want to die, and Saber's like, why not run? Like, fighting us really does seem counterintuitive to staying alive. That was a move he just pulled off. And he's dead. Wait, I sense a server towards the mountains. We should check it out. No other fights in the area. I wonder how different my life would be, like in real life, if I could snap my fingers and regain half of my maximum HP. Like, how would that change the course of my life if, as long as I didn't die, I could heal from it? Ooh, I wouldn't get tummy aches anymore. Oh, he's dead. Oh, he was already dead, but like now he's more dead. They just keep coming. They must be getting desperate. Them blocking our way through probably means there's something over here. Yeah, Lancer might be somewhere ahead. The fact that like I'm friends with Lancer, but also Lancer is one of my like direst enemies is kind of confusing. Granted, that is why we used like the word rogue, but like still. You finish your chicken and you boss yourself. No, don't threaten consultant. They're just hungry, they can't help themselves. Saber, would you? Leave it to me. It is not wrong to give chicken to foxes voluntarily. Saber, I'm sorry. Huh? Why so suddenly? Is it something that you hate? We all do the same thing every day, but that's not what I meant. I want to get Kaya back. In the end, that's my own desire, my own fight. There's no reason for me to drag you along with me. It only occurred to me just now. A little late, I know. Seems like Iori. This is literally part of the Grail War. What are you on? No kidding. It really is too late for that. If that's what you're worried about, stop. I want to rescue Kaya too. What's more, I mean, I can't just leave you alone, you know? Huh? At any rate, let's go. I'm not sure what I just did wrong, but I sure did it. And he's dead. Oh, and there's Lancer. You have come. Lancer, hand over Kaya right now. I'm afraid that is impossible. She is a necessary sacrifice for my master. What are you... There is no point in any further questions. Lord, deliver penance and salvation to these sinners. grant me the valor to walk the path.
まさかお
Could it be?
主
It's you. It's all coming back to me.
こで見た
I knew I'd seen her somewhere before, but I never thought that she'd materialize as a lancer.
なんだおじいさん
What is it, Grandpa? You know her true name? I do indeed. Her true name is Jeanne d'Arc.
かつてナンバーワン
She was a hero who saved France, a maiden led by God, or so they say.
南蛮には疎いが
I'm not familiar myself,
なぜ
but
そうも歯
why
切
do
れ
you
が悪
sound
い
so hesitant, Gramps?
あの勇気が
That
ごと
eerie
き
appearance is
佇まい
nothing like the valiant figure I'd heard of. That's because she's an altar.
さては召喚の折
Perhaps she was tainted by her master's wishes when she was summoned.
戦う気がないのなら
If you have no intention of fighting, then should I start? Huh, bring it on, Lancer. Jeanne d'Arc, the corrupted maiden.
見くびらぬよ
So Fire Afterglow lets me ignore Shell.
風の方
Does that apply here? I did yes. Oh, my bones.
Remnant
待っていろ切れまいはっせやほっはっほっせや
祈りましょう
放つ
頼む
出番だな息を合わせろ行くぞ
We kind of shoved her into a wall and started bullying her. This one does. Oh, they can curve mid-flight. That's good to know.
放つ出番だな息を合わせろ行くぞ
I wonder if my fire spells would inflict fear. She's using fire, so she's probably gotten over it.
燃え盛る炎のごとく
逃がしません
覚悟は良いか
頼む
分かった息を合わせろそこだ行くぞヘリア
全てを灰に
力を借りる
お呼びでしょうか
うせろ
終わりだ身が躍動
全てを灰にここまで
Is that all I have?
一度引き
I will
ます
withdraw for now.
ランサー待て
Lancer, wait. Where's Kaya?
奴は身一つ
She
で
took
逃
off
げ
on
去
her
った
own. Kaya might be closer by than we
カヤは
thought.
今は
Let's search around here for now.
無事であってくれ
Kaya, please be okay. I feel a little bit bad. Oh, it worked. I was hoping to bypass the second shell. That's what I was going for. Kaya.
よし
Alright, thankfully she's unharmed. Let's get her off this mountain.
Yori
How's Kaya, Iori?
まだ眠っている
She's still asleep. At the very least, she doesn't appear to have any injuries. I'm glad to hear it.
まずは長屋へ戻る
Let's head back. We should make sure that there are no spells cast on her or anything.
Yori
Iori,
敵襲
where'd her attack? Is it Ryder?
いや
No, this attack felt like... Oh, he's gone berserk.
君か
So it's you, Rogue Lancer. What a pain.
あいにくとこちらは急いで
Sorry, but we're in a hurry. We don't have time for you right now.
待てセイバー
Wait, Saber, something isn't right.
これは
My There you are, Lancer. You'll never lay a hand on Kaya again. If memory serves, Lancer gets like this when he's like locked in trying to kill somebody.
はぐれをも差し向けるとは
Resorting even to rogue servants.
はぐれの英霊は拠点を
I
離
thought
れ
rogue heroic spirits couldn't leave their bases
長
for
く
very
は
long.
それが破
Yet
られた
they've broken that rule.
なぜ
How?
ランサーもおそらく
From the look on her face, Lancer doesn't seem to understand either.
セイバーそし
Saber,
てそのマスタ
you and your
ー
master should take your leave.
何
What?
死なれては困ります
The girl's death would be an impediment. Protect her with your lives.
カヤを守る
Protect Kaya. We don't need to hear that from the likes of you.
あ
We'd best take Lancer's suggestion.
あもしやこの異変
This turn of events.
九段の
It
大
might be
魔
that
術である
massive
かも
spell
し
we
れん
heard about earlier.
ここは引く
Let's get out of here. I'll carry Kaya. Fine.
ランサ
Lancer, they're your problem now. Oh no, if they make all the masterless servants go berserk, that's going to make Gilgamesh go
地
berserk.
脈を要石の代わりとして限界するはぐれの
Rogue heroic spirits are anchored to a meridian when
だから
materialized.
こそ
For that very reason, they are susceptible to interference with the meridian.
脆弱性をつく邪法
The heresy of abusing such a weakness, whoever may be behind it, is unpardonable. Oh, now I'm playing as like non-rogue Lancer. Tristesse de la Vierge. Okay. Normal is smashable. Fourth is chargeable.
眠りなさい
Sleep now, before you commit any more unpardonable sins.
行きましょう
Oh, my bones.
祈りましょう
Yeah, I just had the thought. Wouldn't it technically be like in my best interest to like have non-rogue Lancer race here?
無駄ですすべてを灰にエンサの声を聞きなさい祈りましょう
Like, it goes against her interest if Kaya dies, but it doesn't go against my interest if she dies.
道を開きます見くびらぬよう祈りましょう終わりにしましょう祈りましょう
どうだ
Oh, my bones. Oh, and there's the shell back. With the Berserk Rogue near? No. Berserk Rogue is, near that one port.
終わりだ 終わりだ
悔やみなさいすべてを灰に戦場の死よその嘆きをここにトリステス・トゥ・ラビアルシ
And he exploded.
悔やみなさい
And he's dead. Pathetic.
彼らは
Did they manage to escape unharmed?
よりカヤは
You're right, guys. I could have dealt with rice balls. Yeah, but I don't want to feed Lancer. She's my enemy.
向こうで休ませてい
I'm
る
letting her rest over there. For now, we should... Eh? No. No, don't make me do this. No. We're gonna take a 5-minute break. Please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom. I'll see you shortly. I return. Consultant, what? Why would you say that a second time? Anyway, so... You know, I shouldn't have done that. Oop. Okay, so... During the break, I thought to myself, how do I, like, mentally prepare myself? You know, for what is probably about to have to happen. And then I realized that there's a way to do this. All I actually have to do is, like, gaslight myself into thinking that this is somebody other than Tamamo Arya. So I just need to, like, convince myself that she's somebody that I'm actually willing to kill so hard that it actually brings it into existence. So I'm gonna start focusing now. Yeah, I can kill this guy. Oh, my phones. Rogue servants, what are you doing here? They're just like Rogue Lancer. We're not getting through to them. Get ready for a fight, Yori. Oh, Tomo stopped accompanying me. Oh, my bones. This guy was a bit of a pain in the backside to fight the first time. And now he's fucked by Tamamo. Granted, also this time now I've got fire. Pretty sure I didn't have that last time. Wait, what? Street Sweeper? What did I get credit for? I like how Tamo's just in the background making vaguely adorable noises. I'm gonna use up like all of my gens healing on this, I feel like. Like I'm taking a lot of damage. Now that said, his shell is fairly close to breaking, and I do have a full substitution gauge. So I got that going for me. I call shenanigans. His shell gauge was down for no time at all. I was going for the Nova Phantasm though. Oh well. Oh, it looks like he's starting to come to his senses. Okay, maybe it's just me, but I feel like his gauge is going down much slower this time.
覚悟は良い。
力を借りる。
出番だな。息を合わせろ。行くぞ。
Or much faster, rather. That's the opposite word to slower.
終わらせる。
There's some kind of bubble on me, which makes me think that like I've been debuffed in some way, but I'm not sure what it does.
待っていろ。
受けてみろ。終わりだ。受けてみろ。
運が良かったな。より
頼む。
分かった。ぜー。
終わりだ。
Don't you put that back up the third time.
終わりだ。受けてみろ。
Oh, my bones. Oh no. Oh, that was almost bad.
受けてみろ。
And he's dead.
はぐれのアーチャーに
Rogue Archer and Arya. Having them as enemies will complicate things.
だらしない。と言いたい
Normally
と
I'd
こ
say
ろ
that
だ
they're
が
no big deal, but this time I'm inclined to
うなず
agree.
かざるを得。英霊が脇目も
Hero
振ら
spirits
ず突貫
charging
してく
straight
る
at
の
us
だ。
like this is just... Wait, Berserker was already Berserk, so now he's double Berserk, which means that he's sane.
はぐれのバーサ
Rogue
ーカー。
Berserker, we're in a tough spot now.
ここは私
I'll
が
have to
引
take
き
him on
受ける
myself.
他になした
Iori, take Kaya and get out of here.
だが
But
お前で
even
あ
for
っても
you,
やつ
he's...
はいちょっと
Hold
待
it
っ
right
て
there. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
師匠。
Master,
あーちゃんもいる
Archer's with you too.
テイさんたちと川崎
On
大
the
師を
way
向
to
かう途
Kawasaki
中
Daishi with
なん
Mr.
かしてる
Zane.
っぽいバーサ
Or
ーカーを
Tay,
見か
we
けて
spotted
ね
Berserker heading south.
3人がかりで止
The
め
three
よう
of
と
us
したの
tried to
だ
stop
けれ
him,
ど
but something
彼
came
が
over him
戦い
mid-battle.
の港の方に
Then he
猛
ran
然
off
と
with a
走っ
friend
て
seated
きたの
before.
よ
We rushed to get here ahead of him.
マスターはすでに港へ入り、
Master's already deported
民を避難
activating
させている。
All that's left is to stop this one.
そういうことだから
And that's the state of
ここ
things.
は私たちが
We'll
引
take
き
over
受け
for you
る2
here.
人はカヤちゃんを連れて
The two of you
さっ
take
さと
Kaya and get a move on.
行くぞより
Let's go, Iori.
今は
Keeping Kaya safe is more important than anything else right now.
師匠、ありが
Thank
と
you.
うございます。
Archer, I'm in your debt as
も
well.
しも恩を感じているなら、
If you feel indebted, I'd rather you repay that debt to my master than to me.
さてと
Alright
そ
then,
れじゃあ引き
let's
続
pick up
き
the fight
共
where they
闘
left
ね
off.
人切り包丁に過
It
ぎない
has
私
nothing more than a
にとって
killing blade. I'm glad to have you
頭の
here as the
回り
あり
brains.
がたいのはこちらも同じさ。
I share the feeling. I'm
私
not
は
a heroic spirit
武
known
芸
for
で名
martial
を成した
prowess,
お前のような武芸者た
but
ちを
there's
束ね
much that I can do
使
with
うこ
skilled
とは
warriors like you under my command.
へえその白石の美貌といいなんとい
Maybe
い
it's that fair complexion and pretty face,
ど
but
ことなく
I might just have an idea of your true
正体の想像
identity.
もならば受けたまわった
In which case,
あ
I
ーちゃん
accept. Use these two swords as you see fit, Archer.
マナ弟子の前で大見え切っ
If
た
I'm
んだ
gonna
も
talk
の
big in front of my darling
きっち
disciple,
り
I'd
や
better
らな
follow
きゃ
through.
あーちゃん指示
Archer,
を
give me
頼
some
みます
directions. Show me the leadership of a legendary general.
無論最善は尽くすとも。
Of course, I'll give it my very best. Just don't let me down in the execution.
飛翔も核や
Much like the flying general, you certainly aren't lacking in vigor.
さて
Let's see if your bite is worse than your bark.
なで切りにしてあげましょうテイさんが人払いしてくれて助かったわこう大暴れされちゃ港もただしつまらんのにさすがにここまでの怪力は想定外普段はこんなんじゃないんだけど
加減を忘れたか。あががいずれにせよ敵の力を改めて測る必要があるな。
やっ
そういうわけでバーサーカーまずはしばらく
You so to start with, I fight as I see
な
fit.
んなら倒してしまっても構わないできる
I
な
won't complain if you happen to beat him.
へえそういうこと言っちゃ人を本気にさせるのがうまいんだ
Uh-oh. Yaha. Joke's on you, my bones are not so easily broken. Oh no, my other bones. The breakable ones.
見よう見まね早く鋭く早く鋭く覚悟
None of that.
ひらめいたなるほどねよっとなん
I said none of that.
早く鋭く
I'm in danger. Hi, I'm Musashi. You might be wondering how I ended up in this situation. Ow, 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 my bones. This guy's no pushover. He's really
あ
letting
なたの
loose.
本気が
そこまでだ
Berserker,
まさか
that's enough. And
それ以上戦えば
continue to fight any further could damage your spirit core. Now fall back.
何
You see, thanks to you, I devised a way to stop his rampage.
軍師の指示はちゃんと
I suppose the general's orders meant to be followed. Alright, he's all yours.
さて
Now, we should lure himself to the port, get the tiger off the mountain, so to speak.
おじけづいたか半信半対する者は誘うなりとも言う正気を失った相手にはこれで十分だすでにその両足はデイネイの
Oh, no.
と知れ行くぞ
Berserker's ultimate technique, the Twink Pile Driver.
その程度か
I like how the dialogue is like, we have to bait him out so that we can, so that we can, like, get him down to the, the bonking. The dialogue is like, we have to bait Berserker away, but then, like, the gameplay is like, defeat him in a fight. I feel like I'd have a easier time as Musashi defeating him.
遅いこの一撃で逃がさんそこだ逃がさん逃がさん
This might take a while.
そこだ逃がさん
I would have assumed that, like, by this point he would have, like, charged me. Or, like, taken a step to the left.
行くぞ逃がさん
I mean, he's not out of my range, he's just blocking everything. It is working, just very, very, very slowly.
そこだ
Hi, I'm Archer. You might be wondering how I ended up in this situation.
そこだ。行くぞ。
Hi, I'm Archer. Anyway. And he's dead.
まだ立ち
Hitting
上がっ
up
てく
again.
るとは
What tenacity.
呆
Truly
れ
an
た頑
impressive
強さが
display.
このまま戦いを続け
He'll
れ
get the
ば
best of us yet if this
こ
fight
ちらが
continues
お
like
しまい
this.
風は吹いた
The wind blows. All that remains is to set the fire. There's his noble phantasm. Surprisingly quick thinking for somebody with no brain.
Archer 安心するには
Let's
いさ
not
さ
call
か
it a
早い
day
ぞ
just yet.
Master
Deal me in,
手札を一
Master.
つ切る許可を気を見
You
誤
would
る
be
なよ
ashamed to miss our chance.
あ
Right. Show me your power, Archer.
あ、アーチャー
Oh, they're burning a command seal for power.
背中を押してやる必要
Well,
も
he
な
was
かっ
champing at the
た
bit.
豪気果断
Don't listen daring as ever, my master.
それでこそ我が主だ轟け石壁
Roar,
戦艦
Cliff, Cliff Calamity, Cradle of Fire. Not sure if they just ignited the whole area or if this is like a reality marvel. I presume we're about to find out. Oh, Berserker is very strong. He's also restrained. Archie's like, nuh-uh. Make ready for a historic beating, Berserker. Berserker's like, yeah, that was the plan from the beginning. Oh yeah, if that had been Sean, that would have been very, very rude. Speaking of Sean, Kanagawa Port is in a sorry state. Go ahead, look away if you have to. It's a bitter sight for a servant of God, I'll bet.
いえ
No,
贖いぬ罪とがが
it is but one
ま
more
た一つ
irredeemable sin. I was simply offering a prayer. Huh. Okay, I guess that all counted as like completing the ley line thing.
Hey, 師匠
Hey, Master. I must thank you again for your support earlier.
連絡をよこしたということは
Can I assume that you're making contact means that you've finished repairing your workshop? Yes, things are more or less in working order.
相当に骨が
Not
折れ
was
たか
easy,
な
mind you. Just you wait until next time, Lancer.
それで吉
About
原のバーサーカ
Yoshibara's
ーは
berserker.
ーチャーが追っているが
Archer is still tracking him down, but his location is still
あ
unknown.
れだけの深手を負わせた以上
However, I don't think he's gone far with the heavy wounds that he sustained.
そうか
I see.
俺には
To my eye, that berserker looked like he was opposed to fighting. As we suspected, he must be under somebody's control.
俺たちも数機
We've
ばかり
also
目にし
encountered
た
several servants.
はぐれ
Yeah,
の英霊た
something's
ち
going on with
は
those rogue hero
起こり
experience
得
that
る
shouldn't
こと
be
が起こっ
happening.
て我らと戦った者たち
All
も
the ones we fought also writhed and cried out in the middle of battle.
強制的な支配
Being
と
controlled
操
and
作
manipulated by force, I'd wager.
それぞれの拠点から離
Plus,
れて神
Kanagawa
奈
is
川
far
だ
from
も
all
の
of their bases.
とんで
Something
もない
strange is
以上
going
多
on.
くのはぐれは
For
斧
the
が
most
紐
rogue
づく
servants,
土
if
地
they
から
move too
長く
far from
離
the
れて
place that they're
し
bound
限界
to,
を
they can't
保てなくな
maintain
る
their
のだ
materialization.
さて
Well then, who is ultimately behind all
本
this?
来英霊
A
たちは
mage would
高
need
位
the
の存
waxing
在だ
moon's power to subdue lofty figures like
永遠
heroic
それ
spirits,
を同時に複数
and
操
controlling
る
many
と
at
なる
once
と
makes it an even more demanding feat to
よ無論
accomplish.
その手の宝
Of
具を持
course,
つ
if
サ
there
ー
were
バ
a
ントが
servant
い
with
る
such a noble
とすれば
phantasm, that would
話は
change
ラ
things.
イダーは横須賀でアサシ
Ryder
ン
had
の
a
オロ
assassin's
チを操
giant
って
servant
い
under
た
control at Yokosuka.
操るといえば
Speaking of controlling others, Yui seems capable of doing
だ
that.
が
And yet,
辻褄は合うっぽい
it's
けど
plausible, but the theory gets snagged on the details, doesn't it?
ああせっかく
Yeah,
カヤを
like,
生け捕りに
why
したの
bother
に
taking Kaya
そ
alive
こに
just to set
多
a bunch
数
of
の
rogue
はぐれを
servants
け
loose
し
around her? Ugh.
うん
Yep,
こ
we're
れは
definitely
決
missing a few
定
pieces
的
of the
に
puzzle.
こういう時は
Mulling it
も
over
うい
won't
く
get
ら
us anywhere.
悩んでも無駄
I need food.
ご飯
And
食
more
べて
intel.
ってことで私
So with that,
一度
I'll be heading back to
吉原
Yoshibara
に
for
帰りま
now.
す
Later. And she's gone.
師匠お気を
Master,
つけ
be
て
careful out there.
いや
No,
もう
she's
行っ
already
てしま
gone.
ったぞ
She moves like the wind.
さすが師匠だ
That's master for you.
女
Man
人であ
or
って
a
も
woman,
ま
she's
るで
always the
変わら
same.
ずくづく気ままな
She does get carried away on a whim,
だ
but I
が
can't
ま
say I
あ
disagree with her.
俺たちは引き続き
We have to keep searching for the
希望の正体を
mastermind
探っ
behind
てみよ
this. As soon as you're ready, Iori.
ああ
Yes, of course.
妹後の回復を祈ってい
I'm
る
praying for your sister's recovery.
では
Well then, until next time.
ではセイバ
Okay, Saber,
Orange mo.
let's rest up for now.
Midnight.
Tomorrow morning, I kind of hope it just throws me directly into another ley line conflict. I like those.
カヤ大丈夫
Kaya,
か
are you alright?
セイバーさん
Saber,
どう
what's
した
the
んです
matter?
か
What are you all
そんなに
excited
慌
about?
ての
ーカヤ
Kaya,
お前
don't you remember?
覚えてないって
Remember?
何
Remember
を
what? Today
朝起きて
I woke
森
up
で
and
兄
watched you
ちゃんの
train,
稽
then there
古を
was
見て
smoke in the house, and
そしたら
uh,
お前は俺
you
の言
didn't
いつ
listen
け
to
を
my
聞かず
warning, and you followed us back to
長
the
屋そ
house.
して
Then you got kidnapped by our enemies.
嘘
No way. But what
そん
is
な
that
ことが
really what happened?
あったんだ
It is. You had us scared to death,
だ
Kaya.
が
But we
敵は
fought
残
off
らず
every
追い
last
払
one
っ
of them
た
and
か
got you
ら
back without one hair out of place. You don't have to worry about a thing now.
セイバーさん
Saber,
その
I caused all the trouble for both of you. I'm so sorry.
カヤが無事で何より
What
だ
matters is that you're okay.
それ以上の
Nothing
こ
else
と
is
などある
important. I'm so glad you're alright.
そうだなだ
Yeah,
がなカヤ
that said, Kaya, I hope you've learned your lesson about not listening to me.
わかった
I have. I promise I won't make any more trouble.
頼んだぞ
I'll hold you to that. Right. Sorry, Iori.
いかがなさんしたか
Is something the matter?
な
To what do I owe the pleasure of your company, Lord Tsuchimikado? There was a disturbance in our plans at Kanagawa Port.
邪魔が入った
Your servant was
武
there.
蔵ちゃんが
So she was. Ahem.
それは
Oh my, please accept my humble apologies. That girl heeds not a single word I say.
分かっている
I'm aware.
貴様を責
I
め
did
に
not
来た
come
わ
here
け
to
で
hold you
はない
accountable.
こたびはあのは
This
ぐれを
time,
使わ
I
せ
only
て
came
も
to
らっ
give
た
my
礼に
thanks
来
for
た
letting me
だ
that
けだ
robe.
さようでありんすか
Truly, your generosity is most flattering, your
言
lordship.
われずともな
I'm well aware. Oh, he's a
何
dick.
も企まず
Just leave the plenty to me and do as I say. You will get what you desire.
吉原区外からの女た
To
ちの
free
解
your
放
women from Yoshibara, I will grant that wish without the waxing moon.
誓ってくださんすか
You swear this?
無論
Of course. Huh.
はあはんなる
Aha, it's
ほ
all
ど
starting to make sense. You know more than you let on, don't you, Dayu?
ちょっといいかい武蔵
Musashi,
ちゃ
can
ん
I have a word with you?
確かめたくってね。
Just checking, but were you listening in on my conversation with Lord Tsujimikado? Oh, but yeah, I was. What am I supposed to do with you?
ごめん太
I'm
夫。
sorry, Dayu, but
でも
listen,
あの男は
you
信頼
cannot
でき
trust
ない。
that man.
そうさね
I know,
太夫。
Dayu.
そんなことは100も承
I
知
know
さ
it 100 times over. It could all be a
命ど
waste,
ころ
maybe
か
even
何
cost me my
けど
life.
ね
But if I can grant
願
my
いが
wish, I
叶
can't walk
う
away.
元より戦う術なんかな
I've
い
never
私さ
had any fighting skills. I don't
そ
know
れ
what
で
I
も
did
何
to be
の因
chosen
果
for the
か
ritual.
私にできるのは
All I can
武
do,
蔵
other
ちゃん
than
が
pray
勝
for
つ
you
よ
to
う
win,
にず
Musashi,
るく立ち回る
is
くら
use
いな
cunning
の
and
さ
deceit.
だからと言っちゃなんだけ
So
ど
I want you to fight with everything
い
you've
なんざ
got,
気
but
に
you will
せ
be
ず
damned.
遠慮はなしさ
Hold nothing back. Do whatever you think you need to do. After all,
何せ
you're a
そん
berserker.
なあたりで
Does that sound fair to you,
どうだろうね
Musashi?
おおむねはぐれの
Most
英霊は
most
掌
heroic
握
heroic
した
spirits are under my command.
い
All
ず
will
れ
bow
全
before
て
me
は
eventually.
故に
For
今
the
は
time
よい
being, we must first complete the spell.
溺れる者もなんとや
Pride
ら
goes before the...
と
what
か
was
言っ
it?
たか
You wouldn't want the same fate as
お
the hike.
前何にせよ
Whatever happens,
僕
I
の
pray
出番
my
が
turn
早
does
々
not
に
come
来ない
anytime soon.
高俊高俊はいる
Takatoshi,
な
you're there, aren't you?
はい
I am here.
我らは場所を変え
We're changing
術式の
locations to
支度
prepare
を
the spell.
整える
Stay here and look after
承
things.
知しました兄
As you
上
wish, brother. May your aspirations come to fruition. Okay, I've got to free the rogue heroic spirits so I can have Arya back. That is like top priority. Our stomachs are full, so on to business. What's the plan for today, Iori? We need to expose whoever's controlling the rogue servants,
手
but
がかりがない
we have no leads, no course of action. That is a problem.
塩らしいなセイバ
Don't
ー
look so dejected, Saber. Things might not be so hopeless after all. Oh, I like the sound of that. Did something come to mind?
ああそうだ
It did. I just need time to think it over. There are rogue servants who weren't gathered there like the others last night. Why is that? Oh, because the spell didn't affect them, which
かの
means
術式の何た
they
る
were
かを
able to
刹那に知
recognize the
って
spell and resist its effect. Yeah, that could be it.
なら拙速と行こ
Then we don't have time to waste.
う行くぞ
Time to pay a visit to the boss's shop. The boss? Really? I'm honestly not looking forward to seeing him, but we don't have any other leads. I'll just have to grit my teeth. Speaking of shop, I want to check out my workshop.
やるか
Is there anything that I can afford? I can make support mystic codes at the workshop. That could be really good. Increases magic bonus. Increases HP bonus. Increases the efficiency of upgrading mounting effects. Increases the speed of crafting gems. This overtime seems useful. I'll also grab this because I do want it. Yes, I want to give. I'm kind of just grabbing things so I can hit level 3, if I'm being entirely honest. Let's see what that does.
これでいい
Allied servants can be changed anywhere. Alright, that's pretty cool. Mummified mermaid and gold dust. Extends time limit sounds like it could be good. I can't make darting dragon. Presumably I can, what's the word? Presumably I can, like, upgrade that to craft more later. That or darting dragon is just, like, super strong, so I'm not allowed to make
丹
them.
念に手入れしよう
Let us maintain our swords while we're here. I think I also picked up some of the really nice woods, so I should probably carve an idol. almost missed that ring. Didn't miss that one.
名刀にも劣るまい。魂を込めよう。
俺の像を掘れ。
Having these ones is really stressful.
上々の出来栄えだ。
なんと見事な。
俺の像を掘れ。
上々の出来栄えだ。
なんと見事な。
Oh, Kitsune Mask. Excellent work, Saber. You're picking up where Arya left off. You can now play Battle Recollections. You can initiate Battle Recollections at the entrance to your house. You can once again face off against strong enemies that you defeated in the story thus far. Try not to push yourself to the limit. You can now play Battle Recollections with new characters, so I can, like, fight specific enemies with, like, whatever characters I want. That's cool. Just for fun. Oh, and there's actually, specific rewards for doing it. That's interesting. When T. Linden, hold on, if I scoot over to the side here. When T. Linden, that's a lot of money potentially. Times like this, it's convenient having our bases so close together. I guess. Only at times like this, though. It's like, that could be a lot of money. Look, Yori, he's as lively as ever.
やはり
Then you did avoid the spell last night. I should have expected as much. In that case, let's ask him right away. I want to get this over with as fast as we can. I wonder why Saber doesn't like him. Like, Gil's actually being fairly reasonable for Gil. The mongrels return. Seeking remuneration, you've come to fill my storehouse then?
いや
No, not this time. There's something we'd like to ask you about.
ならば昨晩のあれだな。
That it was concerned last night.
一斉に今日
Something about
発し
the
た
rogues who all went mad.
なんと
How did you know?
我が千里眼に
Nothing escapes my clairvoyant gaze. It was a delight to watch you fight for your lives. Then we can get straight to the point. Why weren't you affected last night?
何かの術でも用い
Were
た
you
のか
using an ability of some sort?
貴様そのような
You
ことを
come
聞く
all
ため
this
に
way
わざ
merely
わ
to
ざ
stand
俺の
before
元
me and
へ
ask
来
such
た
a
の
thing of me? Presumably it's like his ego was so strong he could never ever be like given an order.
俺は唯一にして至高
I, the singular supreme king, am a different caliber than any commonplace heroic spirit.
我が輝ける魂
No mage could even dream of laying a finger on my indomitable soul.
分かったか
Am I clear, raven-haired saber? If so, then never again ask such an
分かっ
impudent
たなら
question.
ば二度と船舶な問いを
Let's get up here, Yori. You never should have bothered with this one.
まあ待て
Hold on, Saber.
そういえば
Oh, but that reminds me.
思い返せばあの
As I recall, there was one other soul that was... Soul? There was one other soul that was named Unshackled that night, presumably Rogue Saber.
お
Oh?
あれは確か
I believe it was west of here.
ここより
Yes, around Koshikawa, if I'm mistaken.
小石
I'm
川
mistaken.
そこに
Koshikawa?
支配を
A
逃
heroic
れた
spirit
英
there
霊がい
escaped
る
the
のか
spell's control?
さてな
Well, if that's what you think, go confirm it with your own two eyes.
無論そ
Of
のつもり
course,
だ
we'll do just that.
恩
You
に
have
着
our
る
gratitude, sir.
礼などいらぬわ
There, I've no need for it. You are but playthings to keep me of tiring at the present age.
故に貴様ら
So go, scramble about in desperation, and above all, keep me entertained. I don't much like that wholesaler, but I guess I'm grateful to him this one time. Right, thanks to him I've had this open press. We make for Koshikawa. Okay, but like also I want to sell him things. Oh, I'll hear him out. What took so long? You Mongols are too slow. Sir, we were just talking to you. Huh? What are you talking about? I don't remember you calling for us. Fool, it is a retainer's duty to fulfill his ruler's demands at any and all times. True. Wait, I'm not your retainer. Tell him you are. Also, Gilgamesh just gendered Saber male, for whatever it's worth. This is just how he is. There's no need to get so worked up. Yori, no matter. I order you to make for Kanagawa Port and locate a certain merchant. A merchant? Yes, a merchant I was negotiating with. He has not shown up at our appointed time. Yeah, I'm sure he just got tired of your ridiculous demands. Saber, don't be rude. Oh, you're too soft on him, Yori. We're talking about Kanagawa Port, so it might be related to that incident earlier. In that case, the merchant might already be. The goods are to be delivered to my treasury by the hands of a loyal servant. Allow us to be of help. I'm curious about the situation at Kanagawa Port. It would be best to accept. Ah, so you're finally acclimating to your station. Then be quick about it, mongrels. Okay, but like also I want to sell things. Very many coins. I wonder if there are any, side quest things that I can turn in. Probably. Yes, I do. Wait, that woman just disappeared. No, there she is. Never mind. She did the Megamind thing. She, like, accessed her super speed and lived an entire lifetime in the span of, like, those few seconds. Oh, geez, that's a lot of digressions. I must be careful not to progress the story. You are the rogue we saw at Tomanama. He seems ready to fight. He could have anything up his sleeve. Okay, so I presume that these are literally just fights against the various rogues. I mean, I'm not bored with that. Oh. You need to be mindful of the fact that this man can punch not in the direction of me, but still hit me. Get washed, nerd. Get washed again, nerd. And there goes the cell. Shell, whatever. There shall be no shell regeneration if I have anything to say about it. Nope, he regenerated his shell. But only like a third of it, so like we take those. I am out of affinity, which is potentially a bad thing.
顔色が悪いぞより
Well, actually, it's kind of objectively a bad thing, but it's potentially a bad thing with consequences.
見せてやれ
力を借りる
出番だな息を合わせろ行くぞやっ
見えた決める
Also, I might take Droplet off of Saber.
受けてみろ
Like, it's fun when it works, but it usually doesn't, is the thing. Saber, save me.
目を覚ませ分かった
Yeah? Yeah.
逃げるか
Run, will you?
待て
Wait, don't chase him too far. Right.
まず間違いなく
We confirmed that he's a rogue servant who's being controlled. In that
他
case,
のはぐれと連携を
he
取
might
って
be
い
working
る
with other rogues. I don't need you to explain it to me.
奴が向かったのは
He
北
headed north towards Wayna. Let's keep that in the back of our
もは
mind.
やここに用はない
We have no business here anymore. Let's hurry on, alright? But Wayne knows where Arya is. I need to rescue her. A foreign fighter in Asakusa. Oh no. That's where I keep my stuff. Maybe one of these fights is Berserker. Nom nom nom.
また来ておくれよ
He's somewhere in here, presumably. Yeah, I presume that, like, going to the fights is probably the best way to find Berserker. These mosquitoes are eating me alive. I mean, that is what mosquitoes do. I'm not a fan. I wonder if there's like anybody who like genuinely really likes mosquitoes. It feels like an absurd concept to me, but like surely there's somebody out there who fits the description. Also, I should probably consider revisiting my equipment at some point. It's been a little while, I've been picking things up. Ureshi Forest. Ask for upgrade balance? Yeah, but what if I need those later? I'm saving them. Aw, thank you for the hit pass. I appreciate them. Oh, he's dead. And they're dead.
まあこんなもの うだろう。
If Berserker isn't here, then I'm not sure where I would find him.
行くぞセイバー。俺たちは勝つ。
These are just using the gear I like. I mean, that is... I understand how they work. I'm just saving them for later. Oh, he's dead. I'm sure I'll find Berserker. My first thought was... oh, he's not one of the fights. Evidently that wasn't the case. I will simply keep searching. I wonder where that guy was going in a hurry. Like the guy who ran across the entryway. And then we've hit the dog. Saber, are you okay?
何か食べるか。
ごゆっくり。またのお越しを。
Oh. There's another kitty over here. This kid is also petting another cat.
気持ちいいか。
よしよしよし。
Ah, thank you for the head pats. Yeah, there are only so many places in this city, so if I visit enough of them, I will find Berserker.
いかがした。
Ah, having a hard time deciding what to eat, eh? I can recommend you something if you'd like. Thank you for the hydration.
そうさな。そうさ。
It's like kind of a plain rice ball. Okay, so he's not there. I'll peek my nose down this way. Oh, I found a thing, but it wasn't Berserker. I'll head back up this way. I'll check out this northern back alley thing. I think it actually said Berserker was in the residential area, so... maybe he's here?
Nekoだな。
Well, if nothing else, there's a cat.
おとなしいな。
Cats are always worth petting. Unless they don't want to be petted, in which case they're still worth petting. You just shouldn't for your own health. Oh. Thank you for the head pats. You're a pet the cat anyway, suffer the consequences type person. That does work, but like, the risk is that it makes the cat like you less, and then it gives you fewer opportunities in the future to pet it. A foreign fighter in Asakusa. I was incorrect. I thought it said Berserker in the residential area. Like a Mario Power Star description. Need a tip? No. You can. Very important. Like, I know that I'm looking for, like, a terrifying fighter straight out of Legend who may or may not be on a homicidal rampage, but petting the cats is important. Okay, nothing here. No Berserker here. I like how the thing keeps warning me that if I progress the ritual, it'll make the digressions disappear. It's like, well, game, I'm trying, but you're hiding Berserker from me. Maybe he's in my house. Cannot currently accompany me. Oh, this could be really good, actually. Ripping through shell gauges. I also still need to carve 2 fire statues so I can get an extra valor gauge bar. I should do that while I'm here, actually.
魂を込めよう燃え盛る炎のごとく
Masterpiece Miyoo statue.
燃え盛る炎のごとく
And again.
なんと見事な。
いい調子だ
We'll just grab that real casual like. Yeah, I don't actually like Torrent all that much, I found out. I still prefer the open iron guard, I think. Even just visually, I really like the white wrap. Increases loot and increases the power of Valor Strike, sounds like fun. Here you go. Bye. I can also rest. Anyway, we're gonna call it there for the night. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it each and every time. Next scheduled stream is going to be on Sunday. Thank you for the hip hats, I really appreciate them. Yeah, next scheduled stream is going to be on Sunday. The game is going to be a multi-world between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I'm probably beating that game. The next time I'm playing FateSamurai Remnant in particular is going to be on Monday, where I'm going to keep looking for... I'm going to keep looking for Berserker. But luckily, in the meantime, we don't have to, like, kill anybody. I'll see you next time.